Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Hormonally Speaking. This week I get to talk about one of my favorite areas to talk about. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that, and that is perimenopause. And the reason that I like to talk about that so much is of course, I'm in that period of my life, but also so many of my clients are in this place in their life, and there's so much confusion about this time of life. And also, just we've not been taught much about it, right? We um, go into this not knowing what to expect, when to expect things to happen. And so we're going to cover all that and more today. I'm excited to talk to today's guest, Jill Chmielewski, who is a registered nurse, certified health coach, advocate for aging women, and mom of four who is on a mission to change the way we approach menopause and aging. She helps midlife women break free from mainstream way of thinking, where disease and decline are accepted as an inevitable part of aging, and embrace the notion that it is absolutely possible to feel vibrant, healthy, happy, balanced, and strong through midlife and beyond. Jill believes that education is the key to helping women understand their bodies, manage their health, and advocate for themselves as they age. Jill created the Peri to Menopause Roadmap and the Beginner's Guide to Hormone Replacement Therapy to help women navigate the wild ride from perimenopause through menopause and beyond. In early 2022, she launched Pausing Together, an online community for women to connect, learn, and open up discussions on topics that affect pausal women. And that is available on Apple and Google. Jill has been called upon as a pausal guest expert on Women's Health Unplugged, the Period Party podcast, the Forever Chic podcast, the Paloma Health Speaker Series, Corporate Wellness Partnerships Uncomfortable Conversations Series, and the Dr. Louise Newsom podcast. Welcome, Jill.
Oh, that was so fun. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. That's so great. All the things that you are doing and creating for women at this stage of their life, which we
Yes.
know is crazy time.
Confusing. That's
Confusing.
probably the best word,
We'll put
right?
it that way, right?
Yeah.
This pausal time. I like that you
Yeah.
identify it that way. So let's start off with what that is for women
Yeah.
that aren't, in the know yet.
Yeah. And the reason I say pausal is because I think we've always thought about menopause as this like finale, like this one day
Yes.
I wake up, I just no longer have a period, done. Everything is done and I move on with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think pausal is just sort of, encompasses these years, which start really for most women in their 30s, believe it or not, mid 30s, late 30s, some women early 40s,
Mm-hmm.
and they never really end. It's like you have perimenopause, which is that time leading up to menopause where we have hormonal changes. But really, like, hormones peak in our 20s. So if you think about it, if we peak in our 20s, unless we get pregnant, our hormones are sort of on this slow, I hate to
Mm-hmm.
say it, this little bit of a trajectory downward. And then in perimenopause, mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s, there's that more sort of accelerated change in hormones. And that continues until menopause when we have really, we have low hormones,
Yeah.
but they're probably still not even rock bottom yet. That will continue. So that
Mm.
postmenopausal time, we're still continuing to lose hormones, until we really do
Mm.
sort of hit that rock bottom. And I'd say that not in a negative way, but just for women to know that we're not squeezing out hormones anymore like we used to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, I know this is sort of a big debate around that when perimenopause starts, right? Because
Mhm.
so often, I feel like allopathic doctors often don't even think about the perimenopausal
Yeah.
time, or they're like, oh, that's the 2 years before you go into menopause. When
Mhm.
in reality, I think, well, it's funny that they say it's harder to get pregnant post 35
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
your progesterone is naturally starting to decline at that point, right? So
Right.
why they don't delineate that as this time where it's, your things are changing, like
Yeah.
officially you're in that period. Yeah.
Yeah. They do. And they overlap, like you said. So it's like the
Mm-hmm.
reproductive years and perimenopause overlap for a while. So it is really confusing. And I think there's so many symptoms of perimenopause that are attributed to other things, but they
Mm-hmm.
really come back to the physiology of the body, what our hormones do. And when they start to change, we start to see changes. And sometimes they're
Mm-hmm.
super, super subtle. And they're like little whispers that you almost don't even know that you don't pay attention. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, something really does feel a little bit more different. But
Mm-hmm.
it's such a vague symptom that could be attributed to so many other things. So I think doctors tend to miss them,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah,
the
that's a
time.
good
Yeah.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So let's talk through what the hormonal changes are looking like,
Yeah.
and then what some of those whispers might be, and what other areas, women should really pay attention to as they age.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say like mid 30s. Again, it's a little tough to say the timing because the world has become, as you know, a lot more toxic, lots more chemicals, a lot of endocrine, what we say endocrine disrupting chemicals,
Hmm.
which just means hormone disrupting chemicals, as you know. And those two can sort of play into some of the reasons why maybe women even start perimenopause earlier. So, but if we were to really kind of maybe generally speaking, say maybe mid 30s,
Hmm.
you may find that you're having a cycle or two per year that you're not ovulating. And that,
Hmm.
we only make robust amounts of progesterone when we ovulate. So, mid 30s, we may have a couple of cycles where progesterone is really low. But then some cycles where it's very robust. So it's sort of
Hmm.
like a spotty Wi-Fi. I think like there's a little bit of this like communication that's where, the brain is telling the ovaries to do something. And it's like, some once in a while, not really responding very well. And then we'll start to see over time, estrogen starts to fluctuate. So it's
Hmm.
not like this rapid, just downward spiral. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And I think that's probably where the symptoms get really confusing
Hmm.
because you're almost like inclined to maybe make an appointment with your doctor. You want to go seek help. But maybe one cycle was like a great cycle. And so
Right.
you're like, no, no, no. Okay, actually, I'm okay again.
Yeah.
But it's really going up. It's going down. It's going up. It could be, I mean, it's all over. It's like it can be erratic with no rhyme or reason. So we have these like years of fluctuating estrogen
Hmm.
before, as we say, usually the couple of years before menopause, then estrogen starts to take that sort of like nosedive downward and sort of
Hmm.
meeting progesterone where it's at.
Hmm.
And there's
Hmm.
other hormones too. We see thyroid hormone often
Right.
changing during this time. We
Right.
see testosterone is also going down. That peaks in our 20s typically,
Hmm.
which women
Hmm.
don't think about, but we have a lot of testosterone and we need it.
Yes,
So
we do.
that's going down. I always think of it as like the I guess it's the four M's: memory, mood, motivation, and muscle. So if
Mm,
testosterone's changing, we start to see those things change. So we're kind of getting this big, broad, series of hormonal changes, all a little bit at different times and a
yeah.
little bit different for every woman. So it's
Yeah.
it's a little confusing, but that's sort of the general
General,
overview.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to, point out that I've had clients who are even 48, 49, 50, right? Which is 50 or 51 is the average
Yeah.
age that women go
Right.
into menopause, and will test their hormones, and their estrogen will still be like crazy high. But
Hmm.
like you said,
Yes.
could have just been that month, and then the next month
Yes.
it's crashed, but I think
Hmm.
so often women think, oh, my estrogen is just going, way down by mid 45 or whatever. And in some cases, that's
Yeah.
true, but a lot of times that's not necessarily the case. That
Hmm.
estrogen is just like all over the place for a lot longer than we think.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And the magic, I mean, I think we get so caught up in the period, like, okay, I no longer had a period,
Yes.
but it's really estrogen is what builds the uterine lining. So if
Hmm.
estrogen that month was really low, you may not get a period, but then maybe
Hmm.
the next month you have just enough estrogen so that you've got a uterine lining. So you're going to shed that uterine lining. So that's
Hmm.
where it's like, what is going on with my
What is
body? This
happening? Yeah.
major confusion, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So as women, start to embark, let's start with in their 30s when things
Mhm.
start to change. What are some of the things that they can do to support their bodies at that point?
Yeah, I mean, nutrients, I mean, it's kind of always, I feel like every stage, it's kind of that same foundational pieces of health, which I know no one wants to hear
Ooh,
because, right, I
foundation's
know, boo foundation, I
boring.
don't want to do that, right? Like it doesn't help, but it does. And
It
so,
does.
but the hard thing about perimenopause, so sleep is going to be huge always. I would say stress is probably the number one that's really going to disrupt that hormonal rhythm in the body.
Yep.
Sleep is a hard one because we're telling women we want them to get sleep, yet when progesterone is going down,
They can't.
they can't sleep,
Yeah.
and when estrogen's fluctuating, they can't sleep.
Yep.
So that's where again, this is where hormone replacement can really
Yeah.
shine. So that's something women can do even in their 30s. But if we're looking at foundational things, it's the sleep, it's the stress, It's the movement, but in a way that really works for your body. I mean, we have to think about building muscle. We're going to be losing it at an accelerated pace. So
Hmm.
those like, and I am not knocking like an orange theory, but it's like we
Hmm.
can't necessarily, it's not necessarily good if we're stressed all day to go bananas, for an hour with
Yeah.
our cardio. That
Yeah.
really is
Go
going to
do some
disrupt
CrossFit
things.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like, no,
exactly. Even though we
it's our
want
body.
to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's been, and I just think pausing. That's why part of the reason for even,
Mm,
the membership community that I have called Pausing Together is we are in this 24/7 mentality. And in our 30s, when, a lot of us have kids, or it's our career, or it's both, there's a lot going on. It's like that high production time. And I know
yes.
it's like we don't want to be told to not produce because that's our
Yeah.
society. But that's the time in our 30s to kind of say, is this working? Am I getting some little subtle whispers that are making me like my body's changing a little? Do
Hmm.
I need to adjust a little bit and start thinking about, not these massive changes, but are there like just some little tweaks here and there that we can do, whether it means getting a little more sleep or saying no to an outing on the weekend because you do need your sleep, or, not
Hmm.
staying up till all hours of the night or drinking as much as you used to, or whatever it is, anything
Yes.
foundationally that is going to support the body. That's where we really
Yeah.
want to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard for a lot of women. I went through this myself. I see it with clients, what you just brought up, the drinking, the alcohol,
Mhm.
and how that really starts to impact your body so much more as your hormones
Mhm.
start to fluctuate. And particularly with sleep, will just rob you of that sleep, right?
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
even if you think, oh, I drink a glass of wine to help me go to sleep, half the time you're waking up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.
Yeah.
because of that. And so
Exactly.
I know that that's a tough one, but you will be very thankful to yourself in your 40s if you start to cut back in your
Yeah.
30s. I promise you, because
I
post
know.
40, it's a completely different world trying to drink alcohol.
Isn't it? It totally is.
Yeah.
And I mean, along with the alcohol, the food, which I
Yes.
didn't touch on, but the nutrition, because I think we kind of look at this like, oh, yes, nutrition, I should eat better. But thinking about the way that hormones work and the way that they signal to receptors. So for
Hmm.
your listeners, it's like a little satellite dish sitting in the cell waiting for a signal.
Hmm.
And they need nutrients to help that communication so that that hormone can signal. And if we don't have our vitamins and our nutrients, our minerals, and all those things there, the signal may not be sent. So we can
Right.
actually help to improve the signal if we can get some good nutrition on board.
Yes.
And along with that is eating very well, like in terms of slowing it down, chewing thoroughly. We can't digest food if we're just going to swallow it whole. So we really want to this is where it's like that slowing down just a little bit
Yes.
will
Yeah.
go a long way to
Yep.
really help us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I try
Hmm.
and always let my clients know one of the best ways that you can help your digestion is taking 3 deep breaths before you eat,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Oh.
Because we're just in our sympathetic nervous system all the time running around, and then we're trying
Mhm.
to eat and not digesting well. And it's like, for everything in your body that runs in your body, including your hormones, you need good nutrients and you need to
Yeah.
be absorbing those nutrients. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you're not going to get anywhere.
No, no.
Yeah.
So we do all that hard work cooking or
Yeah.
preparing, and it's like for nothing,
Yeah.
so it's just makes sense. 3 deep breaths, it's no big deal, and you feel so different. It's like
Yep.
everybody knows when you take them, you're like, wow, you just feel like you just calmed. You can feel this calmness come over your body.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's speak a little bit more to the sleep, because I know
Yeah.
that that's a big issue for so many women.
Mhm.
And absolutely, the progesterone, particularly the oral progesterone, if you're at that point
Mhm.
where your progesterone's really low, that oral progesterone can be helpful for a lot of women. What other things before, say, their progesterone's not that low yet, or they're not ready to go
Yeah.
on hormone replacement therapy, what would you recommend that they start with?
I mean, I honestly, I feel like starting with looking at your day, because I think if you think you're going to be bananas all day and then your
Hmm.
body's just going to very peacefully, go down at night, it's like thinking about how we would, if you have had little kids before, there's a
Hmm.
process like getting into a bedtime ritual, setting yourself up so that you can fall asleep so you don't have this like a million things running around in your head.
Hmm.
Caffeine, I think, is really big for women that they don't always connect. I've done it myself, and I
Yeah.
think we don't realize how many things caffeine is in, which
Yeah.
coffee actually really does have some health benefits. But if you're having it at 3 o'clock to get through the afternoon slump, it's really going to take its toll in terms of trying to fall asleep at night. So
Hmm.
Melatonin for some women, like there are things that we go back to nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
There are some supplements that can be helpful with sleep. There's some herbs that can be helpful with sleep,
Mm-hmm.
but it really depends on the woman. Melatonin, teeny tiny amounts is really all people need and could experiment with to see if it
Right.
helps them a little bit.
Right.
You want to just be mindful because we don't actually make that much melatonin. So when people are
Mm,
taking
like 10.
5 milligrams. I mean, they
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
groggy in the morning. We
Yeah.
want to be mindful of that. And
Yep.
again, there's other herbs and things like that. Sugar too, just thinking about like sugar before bed,
Mm-hmm.
just being mindful of that like nighttime routine and what you're doing before that so that
Mm-hmm.
you set yourself up for better sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I try
Absolutely.
to avoid a lot of I think trying to avoid some of the medications if possible. We just know that the sleep hypnotics, sometimes you need it.
Yep.
Sometimes there are times for everything,
Yep.
but I think we just want to be thinking about like physiologically what's happening in the body
Right.
and addressing, right, the root cause, whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So now women are moving into their 40s.
Hmm.
What are some of the things? Because, things I'd say this is very much averaging, but like 43, 44
Yeah.
often is when
Hmm.
you start to see some bigger changes. It's not maybe as much
Yes.
of a whisper,
Yeah.
right?
It's not a whisper, it's a loud scream,
Yeah.
as we say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So fatigue is a big one. And that
Yeah.
is even a big one in perimenopause early on in like mid to late 30s. We'll see
Mm,
fatigue, which gets attributed to a lot of other things.
hmm.
Anxiety, because estrogen is up, progesterone is down. We'll see
Hmm.
anxiety really creeping in, even in women who never experienced anxiety before. And they're like, I have never been an anxious person.
Mm,
But
hmm.
this estrogen up without progesterone balancing it out really makes a difference. So that's a big
Hmm.
one. We'll see a lot of times we'll start to see some changes in your period. So
Hmm.
not every woman will see that, especially in their 30s right out of the gate,
Right.
because you can still have a period even if you don't ovulate.
Right.
And women need to know that
Yep.
always.
Yes.
But oftentimes women will see their periods can be shorter, they can be longer, they can be heavier, they can be lighter.
Hmm.
You can skip, you can get to 9 months without a period, and now you've got a period again. So that clock resets because menopause is really 12 months consistently without a
Right.
period. So there's just so much fluctuation happening. Weight gain, that's where we really see weight gain
Hmm.
heat up. And I think most of the studies show it's in the years before menopause where women
Mm.
are apt to gain the most weight. And
Oh, interesting.
it's not just it's not just the weight, it's the
Right.
body composition changes, which
Right.
are really hard to see for women.
Right.
So
Right. Absolutely.
yeah, skin changes,
Hmm.
vaginal changes, even maybe more uncomfortable sex,
Hmm.
maybe more yeast infections, meaning the pH of the vagina
Mm.
changes as hormones change. So these are the kinds of things where women say, I just I'm things are changing down there, but I don't know
Hmm.
exactly what it is. So that's where we get those kind of heavy hitter physiological symptoms.
Hmm.
Although, it's interesting, about 75% of women experience symptoms and 25% don't, which
Wow. I'm
I
surprised it's
find
that high.
I know. And we always sort of say the women who experience symptoms are the lucky ones because you want
Mm.
to be thinking about this, that we're all having the same physiologic things are happening behind the scenes. So when
Hmm.
hormones change in our 40s, we're going to start to have bone loss, muscle loss. Like all
Right.
these things are happening,
Right.
but if you don't have symptoms, you may not be cluing into it. So even though I'm
Right.
sure your listeners are not excited about those changes, it's a good thing. We
Yeah.
need to be paying attention,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things around that age? I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, the things you already talked about in your 30s are important to continue to do, or if you haven't started to do that at that point. But
Yeah.
above and beyond that, what should people be doing?
Yeah, we always go back to the foundational things. I really feel like at that point, and really even when women are younger, seeking out help, getting a menopause practitioner. And what I mean by that is somebody who really, not someone who did like a weekend seminar
Yeah.
on menopause,
Yeah.
someone who understands it
Mm,
because we are losing hormones and women, we used to not live past 50 years of
right.
age. So, right in like the year 1900, I think the average life expectancy was 50. Well, menopause is 51. So it wasn't a big deal. But now we have like artificially extended people's lives. Like we have all of
Mm,
these things that people can do to live longer,
right.
but we're going to live like 30, 40, 50 years
Yes,
without
half
hormones,
half of the
half of
life
our
for
life.
some people.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
this is where hormones, I'm a big proponent of optimizing hormones. And if the lifestyle pieces aren't doing it,
Yeah.
you've got to go back to the physiology and go back
Yeah.
to the root cause and say, you know what? Maybe bringing in a little bit of hormone replacement is going to go a long way
Yes.
to helping to not just alleviate symptoms, but to protect the body systemically. So we're kind of
Yes.
killing two birds with one stone. And it takes a while to find a practitioner. So in their 40s or late 30s, that's the time to start seeking someone out who
Mm,
can really help you
yeah.
and support your body in that way.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I think
Yeah.
that does happen, right? That women are 48 or 49 before they're like, okay, I really, really need help. And then it can
Yes.
be really tough to find that support that they need. And you're already sort of past this point.
Yeah.
I do want to talk now about hormone replacement therapy
Mhm.
because I mean, we've definitely talked about it on the podcast before. I'm
Yeah.
definitely a proponent of it too for the bone, the heart, and what's the other one I'm
The
missing?
blood vessels. Yeah. A
Yeah, and the memory.
huge.
I
And the
was like, what's
memory.
the one I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
missing? Brain health.
What could that
I
be?
know. I was like, I'm getting ready to start my period right now. So
Yeah.
that's
Right.
where
Right.
I'll
You're like,
blame it
it's
on that.
going.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if we're looking, postmenopausal or menopause years, as
Mhm.
some people call it, these are the three huge issues, right, for women is
Mhm.
that, I mean, osteoporosis is rampant, right? I
Yes.
mean, majority of women will have osteopenia or osteoporosis.
Mhm.
I mean, dementia is huge for
Huge.
women, and then
Mhm.
heart disease is huge for
Yeah.
women. That's just starting to be talked about more now. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah. So, I think there's been this fear of hormone replacement therapy, and I won't go into all the details, but
Right.
it's because of the study, the WHI, which
Mm-hmm.
was done and prematurely stopped in 2002,
Mm-hmm.
where it was really falsely sort of put out there that hormones cause breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, very quickly there was a reanalysis done, and even at the time it was statistically insignificant, but that's not what was
Mm.
communicated.
Drives me
So it's
crazy.
right. No, it makes me crazy to
Because
trust me. It's like,
there's
what?
doctors that still say
I
that to
know.
this day.
To
Yeah.
this day. So
Yep.
I think women have been fearful of hormones for
Yeah.
such a long time. But if you go, this is where you were saying too with education, you and I were talking before the show,
Mm-hmm.
understanding your body will go a long way to help you in this time because all we're looking at doing is optimizing hormones. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't, hormones are measured in parts per million, parts per billion, parts per trillion. So when we're talking about hormone replacement, we're not slathering, like vats and vats and
Yeah.
jars of cream on our body. And even in the creams, it's 1% to 3% is the hormone. The other 97 to
Right.
99% is the base. So
Right.
we're talking about bringing in estrogen. We're talking about bringing in progesterone, which are both very important for bones,
Mm-hmm.
very important for blood vessels, very important for the brain. All of the
Mm-hmm.
things you just said.
Mm-hmm.
For muscles too, because women lose bones, they lose muscle, then they
Yeah.
fall on osteoporotic bones or bones with osteopenia. Then they break a bone. Then they end up, not becoming independent. Like we're now,
Right.
and I've seen it firsthand recently in my own family with my mother-in-law in
Mm.
a nursing home. No one wants to go there. No one
No.
wants to be having bladder control issues. All of these things that happen when we lose muscle, like in our pelvic floor, too. So we want to be thinking long term and we want to be thinking short term too. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I always think about it as like kind of replacing as you go. So as it's going
Mm.
down, don't wait until you're now 50, whatever, or 3 years past menopause.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
been this sort of slow trajectory down from our 20s, not to say
Right.
to replace in our 20s, but there's a certain point where we really, especially when you're feeling those symptoms,
Yeah.
we want to make sure we don't lose those protections of the blood vessels. We want them to stay flexible and smooth. And as soon as that estrogen goes down, they
Mm.
become stiff and sticky, and so we
Mm.
want to make sure we're really doing what we can to support the body. So
Yeah.
hormone replacement is, I think, it is coming back. We're having more conversations again
Right.
about it, but I think there's been more and more research put out there finally that has vindicated estrogen.
Yes.
We have lots of hormones flowing through our body when we're pregnant. Most of us not getting breast cancer when we're pregnant. So we have to be
Right.
thinking about what these
Right.
hormones are actually doing in the body.
Right, absolutely. So I
Yeah.
have a maybe tricky or sticky question for you.
Yeah.
Um, just thinking about myself. So, I had a
Mhm.
fibroid mishap and all of that. And so, I test my hormones pretty consistently.
Mhm.
And, I definitely tend towards that higher estrogen
Mhm.
and favoring at different points the 16-OH pathway or the 4-OH pathway,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I've always even in the times after where I'd been doing some work, I was still estrogen dominant. Just recently, I was for the first time not estrogen dominant,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. But it was also like, ooh, is my estrogen a little too low now?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it
Mm-hmm.
was still in. It was a Dutch test, so it was still in cycling range, but on
Yes.
the lower end. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, because I continue to take DIM and other,
Mm-hmm.
supports for my phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox, but this is a tricky area, right? Because I don't
Right.
want my estrogen to go down too much. So in a
Mm-hmm.
situation like this, what would you sort of recommend or think
Yeah, I
about it?
mean, I know. Again, it goes back to optimizing. I mean, I think just thinking about you want the balance. Like it's not just,
Hmm.
I think thinking about the hormone, maybe, hormones, receptor function. How can we make sure those receptors are
Hmm.
functioning well?
Hmm.
That we're detoxing the hormones,
Hmm.
getting them out of, and then pooping, of course, to get them out of the
Yes.
body. So there's
Yes.
this whole process that needs to happen.
Yeah.
It depends. I mean,
Hmm.
cruciferous vegetables, as you know, I mean, this is the
Right.
whole rationale behind DIM. They're very, very supportive with liver
Hmm.
health. So I think anything you can do to support the liver, you want
Hmm.
to be doing,
Right.
and to support those pathways, obviously.
Right.
But we do need hormones, and even in women who have had fibroids,
Yeah.
we it's a unique case by case
It
basis where
is.
you
Yeah.
and you go and it's low, like we talked about earlier, low and slow, whatever you're
Yes.
doing, even when you're bringing replacement on as well.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can do DIM, but I would say, you want to be thinking about, like, pay attention to symptoms. How
Right.
are you doing? And if
Right.
you're starting to feel some of those low estrogen symptoms,
Hmm.
maybe you're switching off of something like DIM. I mean, it's something that I usually don't recommend taking it
Right.
permanently,
Of course.
any
Yeah.
supplement. So if you
Yeah.
can do just more of the foods that will
Yeah.
work sort of in synergy with each other to help support the liver,
Yeah.
you may end up with that really nice, beautiful balance, and those pathways are, going in the direction that you want them to.
Right. Right.
I don't know if that answers your question or if
Yeah,
you're,
I
yeah,
think it is one of those sort of tough cases because I definitely agree with you of not long term any. Usually I tell my clients, not longer than 3 months
yeah.
without retesting to see,
Hmm.
I've gone on and off of it. I do tend to have those high estrogen symptoms if I go off of it, which is part of the problem.
Hmm.
But I do wonder in a case like mine if it's actually worth testing, you know,
Yeah.
every 2 or 3 months to kind of see, because that could have been an anomaly that month, really, with I mean, I'm
Yeah.
43. And to see if it's like, okay, am I having overall low estrogen now or lowered
Hmm.
estrogen, or was it kind of that time and okay, now it's back up, and so I can really sort of
Yeah.
do based off of that.
Well, and the other thing to think about, I don't recommend testing hormones during perimenopause because
Oh,
of
okay.
that,
Yeah, yeah,
because you're
yeah.
going up,
Up
down,
and
up,
down.
down, up, down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have, I mean, the problem is then if you feel symptoms, but
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know what's going on. And I think we are so like tied to data points sometimes,
Yeah.
but all of these things are happening. And the thing about the highs and lows in perimenopause that women have to understand is that's really the brain trying to cue the ovaries to produce. And so you can have even greater estrogen dominance and then these great falls in estrogen
Mm-hmm.
because the brain is telling the ovaries produce, produce, produce. So it's
Mm-hmm.
trying to produce is really high, then it drops again. And this is where it's going to seem counterintuitive, but this is
Right.
where bringing in some estrogen replacement, I know that
Right.
seems odd, but it's going to calm the brain down so it's not screaming at the
Going,
ovaries and we
yeah.
get this very level estrogen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That makes
typically we
sense.
say until you're actually postmenopause and you're trying to follow up on, let's say, hormone replacement therapy,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of check levels, don't test during perimenopause. It's too
Mm.
all over the place. You're not going to have a very valid, I guess, result. And then your
Right.
treatment is going to be based on that one moment that
Right.
may
One
not
moment in
be,
time. Yeah. Yeah. Even
yeah.
if
So
you do a monthly
symptoms are
test.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then when
yeah.
you work with someone, you would go more based on those symptoms. If you're like, okay, these low estrogen symptoms are here, we're going to try that estrogen.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
start very, very low. And
Yeah.
so I work with a doctor, Dr. Rosensweet, who has actually
Mm-hmm.
a line of they're hormones and organic oils,
Yeah.
and it comes in like a dropper bottle. And what I love about it is for someone, especially in perimenopause, you're rubbing, so estrogen goes on your wrists.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally tipping the bottle. So if you picture like an essential oil bottle, it's a drop. You can put a drop on your wrist, rub them together.
Mm-hmm.
It's a super low dose. So the lowest dose I think is like 0.44 milligrams.
Oh,
So
okay. And is that
you're
estradiol that we're
and
talking
it's a
about?
bias. It would be
It's
bias.
okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's the combination of the
Okay.
two. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can titrate. The beauty of that
Mm,
is if you're having a month, especially if you're tuning into your body, usually in perimenopause, you're going to probably, you can stay on the lower ends. You might be
yeah.
just using a drop in the morning, a drop at night. Maybe it's just a drop at night to help you sleep. But if you're having a high cycle, a lot of times women know that they're having this kind of estrogen dominant cycle. Maybe if they're feeling it, sounds like you
Mm-hmm.
kind of know when things are
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
You can titrate accordingly to what your body needs, which is, I
Mm-hmm.
think, the beauty sometimes in HRT that has like dosing
Yeah.
capability where they're not just giving you one, here's your prescription, take it every day.
Right.
We don't want to be all over the map, but when you can titrate in that way, where it's just a tiny, tiny amount,
Yeah.
and it keeps you level, you'll know in about a week or so, you can say, okay, we usually, when we're even titrating someone into hormone replacement therapy, we usually say a drop in the morning, a drop at night, or a
Mm-hmm.
drop at night in a week. Like, see how you feel. You're going to know, if, are you sleeping through the night? Are you feeling better? Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're more level? Are all of the things kind of falling into place? No more hot flashes, maybe no more joint pain, whatever you're experiencing. And if you're not, then we usually say, okay, go up to the next, okay, the next week, go up a little. So there's so
Gotcha.
much, it's not difficult, but there's so much, I guess, personalization
There
with
really is.
HRT and
Yeah.
with all of this that
Yeah.
it really helps to work with someone who really knows their stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you often start women on progesterone first or alongside the estrogen?
Always progesterone with estrogen, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what, even if you have a uterus for
Mm-hmm.
the women out there, because we need both hormones and they really do much better in when they're balanced with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Progesterone makes estrogen receptors more sensitive as well. So, if we don't bring progesterone on, sometimes women will start estrogen and over time they're like, I'm not having that same effect anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these hormones are they're like a family and they really need to be working together. Well, not all families work well together. I guess that's true of our hormones too. They don't always work well together.
Right.
But in a really like Zen family, that's
Yeah.
what we want those hormones to be. Estrogen and progesterone always together.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, so I assume with testosterone too that you go based on symptoms, in terms of
Yeah.
bringing that in.
Yeah. So testosterone, oftentimes, we typically will find that women, testosterone will continue to go down through
Yeah.
perimenopause. Sometimes you'll have a little bit of a blip, and that's just the body trying to make the brain, the brain trying to make the body like make some more estrogen
Yeah.
because we make estrogen from testosterone. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes women will say, I'm starting to get, like a few like rogue hairs or oilier skin or something's
Mm-hmm.
happening. They
Mm-hmm.
may have a little tick up in testosterone, but we typically find within about 3 years of menopause, most women have rock bottom testosterone.
Right.
So
Right.
oftentimes we're starting that too
Mm-hmm.
earlier on before
Mm-hmm.
we get to that point where we don't want to get to the place of rock bottom. So
Yeah.
earlier is typically better.
And then what about DHEA?
Yeah, DHEA as well. I mean, I use the menopause method hormones, and so
Mm-hmm.
my bottle is actually testosterone combined with
Gotcha.
DHEA. They're all
Okay.
in one.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of women, again, it's sort of that helper hormone. I mean, hormones are made from DHEA, so for women, you definitely want to work with someone on that. Because DHEA is also available over the counter.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen women taking like 10, 20 milligrams of DHEA, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really want to go low and slow with DHEA too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think with all the hormones, but I think DHEA can be extremely helpful
Do you
through
think that's
perimenopause.
enough in certain situations to not have to do testosterone or?
I think early on it could
Mm-hmm.
be enough if the
Mm-hmm.
body is good at producing, if the body is really able to do it's sort of like the raw materials for the
Mm-hmm.
body. Can the body do what it designed to do? But our body sometimes doesn't do that. So sometimes it's not enough. I guess in my experience and in seeing testing and working with women over the years, I haven't seen a woman, who has just DHEA who still has great testosterone a few years after menopause.
Yeah,
I
that
see
makes
I
sense.
see the needle moving a lot more quickly with testosterone
Testosterone.
than DHEA alone. But it depends on the woman.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the different forms, because I
Yes.
know that, each
Mm.
hormone sort of has multiple forms that you can
Yes.
take it, and that some will work better for some women and others will work better for other women. So
Yes.
let's start with progesterone
Okay.
and talk about those
Yeah.
forms. Yeah.
Yeah. So progesterone, and we should definitely make the clarification, progesterone is not the same as progestin.
Yes.
Or a progestogen,
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
another word. There's like all these words that everyone's confused about.
Anything that birth control pills have
Yes,
in it is
it is
not
not.
truly
Yeah,
progesterone. Yeah.
it is not. And they're really such different molecules. Progesterone made in the body versus progestin. I mean, almost like opposite effects, aside from the fact that the both will control the lining of the period, or the lining of
Yes.
the uterus, if you will.
Yeah.
Progesterone, we typically recommend, everyone's different, but we typically recommend oral
Mm-hmm.
micronized progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of compounding pharmacies because you can start low. You can make any dose for any woman. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much variability that you do there. Typically we're taking oral micronized progesterone at night. You may start a woman on 50 milligrams, maybe up then to 75, up to
Mm-hmm.
100. Some women need to go up to 200, but oral is typically what we're going to need to protect the body, to do all those like systemic functions that progesterone does,
Mm-hmm.
and protect the uterine lining so that we don't have a uterus growing out of control. Um, oral is the only one that we know of. I mean, people experiment. There is topical progesterone, which can be very good as well.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't tend to have those same like sleep and like
Right.
anti-anxiety benefits. Although
Unfortunately.
some women will say, I use progesterone on my skin and I feel better.
Yeah.
So
The
we never say
body's
never.
fascinating.
Right. And like nothing stays in one spot. So we
Yeah.
know things can cross over, but we know that oral progesterone for most women is going to be the gold standard with sleep, and then also with protecting the lining of the uterus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And so
Yeah.
let's talk about estrogen then. What
Yeah.
what
So
forms?
estrogen is, yeah, a little more complicated only
Yeah.
because so estrogen, we want to stay away from oral estrogen at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
There's exceptions to every rule, as we always
Mm-hmm.
say, but we know that oral estrogen increases clotting factors. So women know that, who are on, well, should know that, should be part of their informed consent if they're on the birth control pill. It can increase clotting factors. It's very hard on the liver.
Mm-hmm.
It increases something called sex hormone binding globulin, or
Mm-hmm.
SHBG, which tends to decrease testosterone. So there's a lot of not so great things with oral estrogen, which there's no need for us to use it because we have like this beautiful availability of topical estrogen,
Right.
which is what we want to use.
Right.
In topical form, again, and for women that are listening, it's just, we're typically rubbing it. There's different places you can rub it, but oftentimes it's on our wrist is where we'll
Mm-hmm.
put it. But there's a couple of forms of that too. There's also the patch. I'm not the patch is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to like the compounded because I like that there's not a lot of funky other ingredients that are added to
Mm-hmm.
the creams
Mm-hmm.
typically,
Mm-hmm.
or the oil or the gel or whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
using. And there's a little more control over dosing. You can titrate to your unique dose when you're doing like a cream or something
Mm-hmm.
topically.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two types of estrogen for the skin. We can do estradiol, which is
Mm-hmm.
just one type of estrogen, or we can use Biest, which I was talking about earlier, which is two estrogens. One is called estriol and one is called estradiol.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we go with Biest, and the reason a lot of us, I think, are fans more of Biest, is because we know that there's more estriol in the body than there is estradiol and estrone combined. So we want to
Mm-hmm.
copy nature.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
know by using Biest, we're sort of producing or giving the body estrogen in a similar way that the body would have estrogen in the body.
Gotcha.
Um, Estriol signals what they call like the beta receptor, estrogen beta receptor, which is more of like that calming, anti-proliferative kind of effect, where estradiol signals the alpha receptor, which is a little more like alpha, like a little more
Mm-hmm.
aggressive, a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
proliferative. So when we're trying to avoid things like, breast glandular proliferation, which
Right.
we get every cycle with
Right.
our own hormones,
Right.
Biased is nice because it has that balance where we're not going to be overly signaling certain receptors to proliferate. So yeah, I
Makes
like
sense.
Biased more than I like to sort of single estrogen alone. But I mean, if that's all you have available, estradiol can still be a really great option.
Gotcha. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. For both progesterone, I mean, I've probably heard this more often with progesterone,
Hmm.
but also with estrogen or bias.
Mm-hmm.
If a woman decides to use it vaginally, is
Mm-hmm.
that going to just impact the vaginal tissues, or is it going to go systemic?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel like there's still so much out there. I mean, nothing stays in the vagina, so I
Right.
feel like it's going to go further.
Mm-hmm.
We'll oftentimes use a certain type of estrogen, estriol,
Mm-hmm.
for vaginal. People have like really vaginal dryness,
Atrophy.
vaginal
Yeah.
issues,
Mm-hmm.
because you think about when we're in pregnancy, we produce most like tons and tons of estriol, and it's
Mm-hmm.
getting the body ready to deliver baby. So it's really working on that vaginal tissue. So
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes we'll use estriol. They do, you can put them obviously in vaginally. Usually we're not using, usually if we're going to deliver it for systemic effect, we're going to put it on the skin.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to look because vaginal absorption is usually a lot greater than
Right.
on the skin. So we
Right.
want to make
Right.
sure with our dosing, we're being very mindful.
Good. Yeah. Good point.
And progesterone too, I mean, some women actually, there's some women who will take oral progesterone and it doesn't do what it should do
Right.
to protect the uterine lining. So in that case, sometimes vaginal progesterone can be better, and that may be
Mm-hmm.
a better option for women. I haven't seen it used, I guess I would say typically it's not used as like the systemic delivery long term. Plus, women don't really want to be,
Putting it
that's a big
all in
ask
there.
to like every night
Yeah.
say, okay, put that in or
Yeah.
twice a day with your
Yeah.
estrogen. So on your skin, it's like part of your skin ritual. But I feel
Right.
like
It's easy.
vaginally, it's a lot to ask unless we're
Yeah.
really more therapeutically trying to do something
Right.
local
Right.
in the vagina.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That makes
Yeah.
sense. One more quick question about
Yeah.
progesterone before we go on to the forms of testosterone.
Yeah.
With progesterone and adrenals.
Hmm.
So I've seen this actually with a couple of clients who will go on that oral progesterone
Hmm.
and they will be like ding at night, right? Which is the total opposite of
Yeah.
what it should be doing.
Yes.
So do you see this happen sometimes with when their adrenals are dysregulated, that the oral progesterone, either because of the levels or just getting that progesterone in when the cortisol is dysregulated? Do you see
I
that happening?
have, you know what I have, and I don't know if I can say I've always seen it tied to the adrenals, although it tends to
Mm,
be the women that are really, really stressed out or
mhm,
have had those kind of like stressful lives. There are some women though that just need much lower doses. Like there are women that are
mm,
very sensitive to progesterone, which
mhm.
is in a way strange when you think about it because we make it every month if we are
Right.
having, right, if we're ovulating. So that's where like a compounding pharmacy, we might say go down to like 25 milligrams. You can actually
Mm,
make a 25 milligram tab and do something like that or experiment with it.
mhm,
Maybe before bed isn't the right time. For most
mhm,
women, it is.
mhm.
But for some women, it's not. And maybe
Yeah.
before bed is not really the right time.
Right.
We want to be working on those adrenals. I mean, if the body's in this stressful state and cortisol is high and we've got this chronically high cortisol or chronically low, it's
Yeah.
flatline now because we've been so stressed for so long. We want to be working on that as well.
Mhm.
What's interesting though is having low hormones is stressful for the body. So
Right.
it's this fine line
Right.
because right, we want to do these things. We want to support people maybe with HRT, and
Mhm.
we know not having hormones balanced and optimal is stressful.
Stressful. Yeah.
So then we kick out more cortisol. So it's really this. I mean, this is where we go back to, and I say this all the time. Working with a practitioner
Mhm.
who is like, this is what they do. Like they
Yep.
don't just sort of on the side. Like this
Yep.
is what they do, and it's for a lot of women, they're thinking it's going to be their GYN, and it's
It's
not
not.
because that's not how they're trained. It's not at
Yeah.
fault on them. It's just not the training that they get.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
just had Dr. Tabitha Barbara
Oh,
on
yeah.
recently,
Mhm.
and I think she did such a good job of explaining, what they learned in medical school was medication, using birth control,
Mhm.
and to regulate periods and surgery. I mean, and
Yes.
that's the training, right? She said they learned as much as a family doctor does about actual hormones and about the endocrine system. It's like all the learning that she did about that was, after she'd already been a doctor for a long time. And so,
Yes.
yeah, to always remind people that, yeah, unfortunately, if you go to your doctor with these hormone issues, they're probably going to want to put you on birth control. That's
Yes.
probably
Yeah,
the
that
path,
which is not what we want them to be
No.
doing, unless that's what we're seeking out for whatever reason.
Right.
There was actually like an article, I think it was in 2018 in AARP, the magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and it was looking at like a Johns Hopkins survey, and it was, I think they said less than 20% of OBGYN medical residency programs even offer a course in menopause. And if there is one, it's an elective, which it's
Yeah.
like, half of the population is women. So
Yep.
half of the population is going to go through menopause.
Yeah.
And it almost is like that's more, I mean, not half the population is not necessarily going to want to get pregnant, but
Right.
half the population is going to go through menopause. So
Right.
we really need to be stepping up our game in terms of, women. I think we are. I think
Yes.
we're starting
Yeah.
to shout a little louder and say, no,
Yeah.
no, we need some help here.
Yeah.
But that's where shopping around for a practitioner, it's like the earlier the better, because even if you're not having symptoms now, you will at some point. And
Well,
even if you don't, like we said, 25% of women maybe don't have really obvious symptoms. Those physiologic changes, bone changes, the brain, the blood vessels, all of those
mhm,
things are happening anyway.
mhm.
So you want to have someone that really understands a menopausal woman's body.
100%. And I want to
Yeah.
come back to that in a minute. Let's
Yeah.
finish up with testosterone. What are the
Yeah.
forms there?
Yeah, we really only recommend topical. There are pellets. I know the pellet people out
It's a
there will
big
probably say,
thing.
"Oh, yeah." Again, we always say we never say never. We never say
Right.
never, but they're
It's
really high
intense.
doses. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're really high doses. And I think women sometimes, especially if their testosterone's been low and they use pellets, they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, this is
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
I feel so great." And they're just like,
Yeah.
just but
But
then it
until the acne
changes.
pops out
Yeah.
and the, other
Yeah.
not so fun
Yeah, and
symptoms.
then
Yeah.
it raises sex hormone binding globulin, that what we talked about earlier, SHBG, which can be measured on lab work, and then it's going to lock up testosterone. It can lock up estrogen, so it can muck with all
Mhm.
the hormones anyway.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
tend to see, yeah, within that cycle, because I think you can get them replaced. It's like every 4 months or so
Right.
for women. You have to, they're surgically. I mean, it's not surgery, but you are surgically
Yeah.
going under the skin every time.
Yep.
The better way to do it is topical. It's
Yeah.
simple. You're applying it to, I use it, like I just put it right on my, it's so fun. So I see Dr. Rosensweet, and
Mhm.
he always says, put it kind of like over your ovary, like where you don't have to put it over your ovary, but kind of like
Mhm.
picking another spot to put something.
Mhm.
The abdomen is a good place. We want to put it on the skin where we don't typically grow hair, because you can
Mm.
grow more hair wherever you are
Oh,
putting
putting it.
testosterone.
Okay.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
want to make sure we're avoiding spots
So
like that. And
women
for
are
most
like putting it on there.
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
But it could work. I know they're always like, "Well, right here
Yeah.
on my forehead, please," right? Don't put it above your lip. That would
Yeah,
be a bad
definitely not.
idea. Or your chin.
Not right here. Yeah.
No, we don't wanna do that. So, yeah, so topical is beautiful, and it's
Yeah.
just again, it's a drop or 2, if you're using an oil, it's the cream. Women can know too that compounding pharmacies can mix. We recommend keeping the hormones separate, but if someone is like, "It's too much for me to think
Yeah.
about," they can be mixed
Mix all
sometimes too
three.
together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really cool ways. We usually recommend testosterone in the morning though, because it can be energizing if you think about testosterone.
Yep.
So
Yep.
testosterone before bed is
Hmm.
probably not
A
something that we
good way
want
to
to be
go.
doing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
morning ritual. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the pellets of avoiding them for most people is really probably a
Yeah.
much better option.
I have definitely seen, a couple clients have come to me after they've gotten that done. And what's so hard about that is if it's too much, you don't have any recourse until
No.
3, 4 months later, right? When
Yeah.
it's gone. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the hard part,
It is.
Yeah, it's not pretty,
Yeah.
but
No.
so in terms of finding a practitioner, this can be the hard part, right?
Yes.
So can you give some advice on how women can go about doing that?
Yeah, this is probably the number one question I get is
Mhm.
how do I find someone, especially now in the membership community.
Mhm.
We do Q&As every 2 weeks with Dr. Rosensweet, and
Mhm.
it comes up because we're talking about hormones and HRT and many
Mhm.
things. And I think then women are like, I want to find someone, and they're
Mhm.
having so much trouble. I think one of the probably the simplest ways, or maybe for everybody, is calling your local compounding pharmacy or one that's in the
Mm.
area and saying to the pharmacist, who do you know? Who do you work with that's
Mhm.
really good and really knows their stuff with hormones?
Mhm.
Because they're going to know based on the prescriptions that they receive if someone knows their stuff or not. If the
Mhm.
prescription comes back kind of, wonky and it doesn't
Mhm.
seem quite right, they're going to know.
Right.
They will know those repeat doctors that are filling prescriptions at the pharmacy over and over and over. So that can be, I think, one of the best ways. And I've from feedback from clients and patients over the years is that's been a
Mm.
pretty good way to
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
There are certain, like IFM, Institute for Functional Medicine,
Mhm.
they do have hormone training programs. A4M has hormone training
Mhm.
programs. So you can kind of go to some of these, groups where they do hormone training, but hormone
Right.
training that you really trust.
Right.
I think those can be maybe some, I would say that's probably like my top recommendations for sites to go to at
Yeah.
least sort of search.
I love
Um,
A4M. They're
yeah,
great. Yeah, I've gone to those conferences. I really, yeah. They're
they're
on top of
good.
that. Yeah, they're on top
Yeah,
of it.
they
Yeah.
really, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of them are. I mean, sometimes hear different practitioners talking about things and I'm like, "Ugh," because I know what I know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of
yeah. You're
step
like,
away. Like, no, not that one. So I have my like little list that I kind of stay away from, but that is probably your best bet. Friends sometimes can be helpful too, but shop around and
yeah.
get your questions. And when you understand hormones and know what to ask for too, to say, so if they're recommending a pellet and you have learned about pellets, you'll know to say, you know what, or you read their bio, because a lot of times, if you go down that rabbit hole and you
Mm-hmm.
start trying to find a practitioner, they're going to have a website. You can see their sort of approach to menopause and what they
Mm-hmm.
do. And you're going to get a vibe about whether or not they're in alignment with what you are also wanting for this
Mm-hmm.
time in your life. So you just have to take some time, just like we do for our like pediatricians, our
Right.
OBGYN. We just have to
Do the
research
research.
it.
Yeah.
I will say, and I've said this, Dr. Rosensweet and I have talked about this a lot,
Mhm.
kind of back to the family doctor. I mean, you want someone who not just went to that weekend seminar at A4M, but really practices it. So just like if you broke a bone, you can go to, a family doctor probably learned in med school how to set a bone. But do you really want to go that route? You
Right.
want to go to an orthopedic doctor because
Right.
that's what they know and that's what they do all day, all night. So
Right.
with menopause, really finding someone that is, that's all they do. That's really,
Yep.
or that's the bulk of their practice. I would say that's really where you want to go.
Yeah.
And the other kind of comment on that is you probably will be paying out of pocket. And I hate to say that to women, because we're used to this healthcare system where, it's not paid for, but it's part of insurance.
Right. That we
Um,
pay an exorbitant amount of
we
money
do.
for. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, that we pay a
Yep.
lot for.
Mm-hmm.
But to find someone who's gonna spend you need more than 10 minutes with them. So
Yep.
you wanna sit down with someone for an hour that wants to hear your story. It's
Right.
not gonna be every month that you're gonna see them, but when you
Right.
start out, the first year meeting with them, you'll maybe get an hour with them or 45 minutes, and then a follow-up visit maybe for half an hour, 45 minutes. And then you're kind of on smooth sailing. You're seeing them once a year, maybe twice
Mm-hmm.
a year.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of in your
Know
mind
that.
thinking, I'm going to pay out of pocket for this, but it's going
Yeah.
to be worth it because they're going to really hear my story and what I
Right.
want. And we're going to be in a partnership together.
Right. So
Yeah.
important. Are
Yeah.
there any doctors that are able to work nationally that you recommend?
If it's all about if they do telehealth, I mean, there's tons of
Mm-hmm.
menopause docs that will do telehealth
Mm-hmm.
visits. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool news.
Mm-hmm.
Testosterone's a little funky because of the class of medicines it's in.
Mm,
There's a little bit with licensing and being in the same state and things like that.
gotcha.
So that is where things can get tricky.
Okay.
With COVID, there was some wiggle room, I think, on some of that. I don't remember all of the nuances, but telehealth is a great option.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might have to go to the state. I mean, when I first started, I was going to California for a visit anyway, and that's who I saw. I live in Illinois, I live outside of Chicago. I went to
You're
California,
like,
and as long as you see your practitioner in person for the first visit, you can
oh,
do the
then they
rest
can do.
telehealth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
that may be something to think about as well,
Because I know some people are listening in a small town
Yeah.
that there's just not even an option,
No,
at all.
no, I know.
Um,
Telehealth is an
yeah.
option, but I think you do have to be in the same state for testosterone prescriptions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's so
Mhm.
fascinating, right? How they decide
I know.
these
Who
things.
gets I don't get me started.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness, this is such an amazing conversation. I could have asked you so many more questions. I'll probably want to bring you back on to
Yeah,
just
I'd
talk
love
more
to.
about all of this, but tell everybody how they can be in contact with you and more about your membership
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, no, so I'm no longer working one-on-one with patients or clients. I hung up my one-to-one hat about a year ago. I really wanted to just educate women more broadly in a community, but also connect. So I just launched a
Mhm.
membership community called Pausing Together. That would be the very best way to come
Mhm.
in, connect with me. You can ask questions. We've got tons of content available for women.
Mhm.
And then we do Q&As with Dr. Rosensweet every 2 weeks,
Nice.
all the questions that are being asked. And then we have guest experts more and more coming in. I just launched the community this year. So
Very
we're
cool.
sort of in build mode,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's really fun. You can find it on Apple, you can find it on the Google Play Store, or you can go to my website, which I don't know if you want to include maybe do you include in the
It'll
show
be in the
notes? Yeah.
notes for
So
sure.
that'll be
Yep.
great. You can learn
Yep.
more about it there as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
thank you for so freely sharing all this information
Yeah.
that so many women really need to know and
Yeah.
have that guidepost because, it is such a struggle. So
Yeah,
I
it's my
really appreciate
pleasure. Thank you for
that.
having me. I so
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
All right.
Okay, you guys,
Okay.
I will see you next time.